Okay, welcome everybody to the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee meeting. Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. Just do the roll call. Peter Thompson. Here. Yes. And Ben D'Antonio. Present. And Herb. Present. Yeah. Tom Rooney. Here. Kevin Charette is out of town. Deputy Blaisdell is not with us. And Tracy Cameron's not with us. Kate Cook is
Still not here.
trying to get in online. I wanted to just go back to the priorities we set as a group in our group exercise a while ago. And the bottom listing shows the rank ordering. Our top item was community scale solar projects. Then collaborating with neighboring towns and cities on priorities and best practices. Of course, our oversight of Portsmouth Community Power, which by the way is signing up Concord as their next big city. And then lower the municipal carbon footprint. Behind the meter solar. We can include wind on solar plants in that. We're working on that. And our presentation tonight on ways that we can get building efficiency. Maximizing our opt-ups in community power to the greener options for residential electric. Community solar projects. And Tracy has did some research on that for us. So I just wanted to sort of tag up and take a look at these. And we're chipping away at some of them. As we talked about last meeting, I'd like to put together a work session on our idea of solar at the Jones Avenue landfill. And love to get your thoughts on who some of the brains are that we should have at the table. I think Katrin from Clean Energy New Hampshire has been around the state looking at municipal solar installations. I think she has a lot to offer us. You know, should we have one of the developers in the state like Revision? Should we have our own public works folks? Or maybe Joe. So I think we'd like to get good cross-section and structure a good discussion around that. What's feasible, what's not feasible. You know, we're developing some nice relationships with Clean Energy New Hampshire, with National Renewable Energy Lab. And we'll get an update on that project tonight. With Community Power. On the Community Power Coalition, which is really becoming a force in Concord for the citizens as opposed to the utilities. So there's a lot of good relationships I think we're building, which I'm pleased about. We have some minutes to approve. Everybody have a chance to read them? Great. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. First up, you know, we've been looking at alternative energy, renewable energy sources for the municipal load. And we've been exploring solar or wind at the sewer plants. But in that discussion, Peter Rice said, well, you're walking past the biggest energy savings and efficiencies and carbon reductions if you're not looking at how we get our buildings more efficient. Negawatts instead of megawatts. instead of looking at the consumption side instead of the production side. So he and I had a follow-up discussion, and he said, we're doing a lot. We're actually doing a lot on this. And that's what I thought we would dive into tonight with our guests. And Carrie, you're going to be our presenter, I think.
Yep.
Carrie's from EEI, Energy Efficient Investments. I think you'll be impressed with the results they've gotten for New Hampshire cities, particularly Manchester. You'll see a pretty impressive chart there where they've reduced consumption 44%. And these are long-term strategies. They take time to develop. They take capital to put behind them. My hope is that we could listen and learn a lot. And as we get near the capital improvement plan, maybe there are things that the Energy Advisory Committee can weigh in on. Joe?
I was just gonna, when you're ready, I was just gonna make some quick introductions, to give
Sure.
you some background as to how we got here,
Yep.
whenever we're ready to do that.
Yep.
Excellent. My name is Joe Almeida. I'm the facilities manager for the city of Portsmouth. Back in April, EEI approached us to contract with them to do some energy audits of several buildings. We were very familiar with this firm and their relationship with E&E, who both firms are, they're divisions of one another, I understand, they're related. And they're very familiar with our facilities. Mike Davies is someone that does a lot of work for the schools, I understand, which luckily I'm not in charge of, that's Ken Lynch, but we want to take advantage of their knowledge of our buildings, and we believe that they are definitely the authority on helping us understand the efficiency of our buildings. So back in April, we did, like I say, we contracted with them for multiple buildings. The first half dozen buildings that we're working on are the police station, all 3 fire stations, the library, community campus, the public works facility, and City Hall. So, so a few 100,000 square feet of buildings. It's a lot of work. They have been to, I believe, every single one of these buildings already to conduct their research.
Joe, could you elaborate again, those buildings, which buildings were they?
The police station and City Hall, which are really one
Okay,
building.
yeah.
All 3 fire stations, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay,
The library.
Yeah.
Community campus, the public works complex.
Yeah.
And that's it for now. The wastewater treatment plant and the Madbury pump stations are being done under a separate effort. So those are being done in another way. And I'm not shepherding that, but I can get that information from you as to how that's being done. So tonight, as you had said, we have Carrie Worms of EEI and Adam Janess. And I will waste no time in turning it over to them so we can hear exactly what it is that they do and how they can help us.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm Carrie Worms, like you said. I'm with EEI. I've been with EEI for about 3 years, but doing energy performance contracting, energy work for 13 years in Maine and New Hampshire. So very familiar with the style of comprehensive projects that we're kind of looking at and explaining why we're here today, where we can help you, and the benefits. If you want to go to the next slide, I kind of can give the intro how we do how we accomplish this. Through our energy performance contracting, we have been in a long-term relationship with the schools at Portsmouth and done quite a few projects from renovations to energy savings, and laid out a few different approaches of how we can do it. We certainly accomplished them through various funding mechanisms. The way the process starts is with the preliminary audit. We come in, we'll take a bird's eye view of the building, look at it all, see where there's most need, and then dial in from there, from site survey all the way to lighting and low-hanging fruit. The reason we find it important to go from low-hanging fruit such as LEDs and HVAC to ADA and renovation work is you need to see a list of priorities to make an investment in your building. Even on the HVAC side, it's a large investment. It's a lot of money. So you want to make sure you're putting your priorities right. And if there is a large site issue that might take precedence, we want to make sure we take that into account when we're planning how we fund it. Because the last thing you want to tell your community is we just spent, a few $1 million on our HVAC, didn't realize this building was actually just falling down or had a lot of other issues. You want to be informed about the buildings. So that's our preliminary work, is to take a look at the whole picture. From our preliminary findings, we review it all with you. So we'll bring this to the city and say, here's everything we see. In most cases, it's a huge list and it's overwhelming. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. And then we say, okay, but here are the priorities. Here's your immediate need items. Here's your 3 to 5 year out. Here's 5+. And from there, we really focus in on the priorities and say, this is what we recommend as priorities. And your team might come forward and say, actually, these are some of our priorities as well. Let's mesh the two lists. And then we go into a final investment grade audit. So then we take those immediate lists and we get into engineering and we come up with a few solutions and options in what's going to be your cost of operation versus your cost of install and longevity of each option. So each HVAC solution is going to have, 1 to 3 viable options. Do you want the Cadillac? Do you want middle of the road? Or, hey, you know what, this building, let's just put in kind of the low cost but sustainable solution. Having that information helps us decide where do you want to go with those. So that's kind of in that final investment grade audit. We'll narrow it down for each building, or for just on that list. Sometimes it's not even it's going building by building. It's let's look at one building versus the next. That's what we'll decide and when we review the findings and stuff too. Investment grade audit, what you'll have is a full matrix of those solutions with options, cost of operation, and how that would look with savings and rebates associated with it. So the full analysis with the numbers, which is really how you're making the decisions. Of course, it's efficiency, but at the end of the day, it comes down to efficiency is great. How do we afford this? So that is part of the final investment grade. And then we go to construction. So then we'll do construction on the project. We'll phase it however works with the city buildings of operation. We've done from schools to city halls where you have town councils, you have law side in there. So you kind of have to manage it based on the occupancy. And then the measurement and verification. This part's unique to what we do as an energy services company in ESCO. We guarantee the performance and operation of what we install. And that means we also guarantee the energy savings. When we show you a cash flow of measures and say, here's your energy savings, here's your rebates, here's your federal grants, that savings sections we guarantee. So if we miss those savings, knock on wood, I've done that for a long time, haven't written a check, we write a check to you guys. So we make sure those savings are very verified before we actually let you sign a contract. But yes, the savings are guaranteed over a period of time. Typically, customers, depending on what it is, say, let's do a few years, let's really ensure that we're good to go. And then they're like, okay, we know the savings are here. Sometimes we have our analytics on your system. We can continue to do it for the entire length of the project, however long the customer wants to see those savings. A lot of times the analytics program does help us, find other opportunities in the building controls. Be like, hey, a certain air handlers aren't operating on schedule. Maybe there was a manual override that took place. Let's point that out. That's a way to kind of find some miscellaneous ongoing savings. So measurement and verification is legally required as part of our projects, how we operate as an energy services company. It's why we're able to get lower financing rates through a lease purchase. And it's because we're guaranteeing the banks, this project is going to work. You're going to see the results. And we back it with our PE stamps. So you want to go to the next slide?
Question?
Yes.
Does the scope of your analysis include all energy, or is it just focused on electric or gas or water
Nope,
usage?
all energy. We do geothermal,
energy.
we do solar, and later I have a slide too about some of the geothermal and solar rebates right now. Which typically over the past few years, really never talked about geothermal solar to customers because the upfront cost is just so expensive. But with the new Inflation Reduction Act, they've now said you can get 40 to 50% back on your install cost. And you can group a lot of the electrical upgrades that you may need in a building into that cost. There's smaller things that you can actually wrap into that to make it even more beneficial. I have a school doing a 3-phase power upgrade as part of their solar. So there's certain avenues that you can get more into that. And then you get that check back to you tax-free. It's more of a rebate than a tax credit. So we're doing 5 to 6 geothermal projects currently and 10 maybe plus solar projects right now, using that mechanism. Yep.
So I'm gonna piggyback on Ben's question. I think if I understood Ben correctly, and I was looking more at not necessarily the energy production side, but are you measuring electricity, gas usage, oil usage, any energy that's being used currently by the building involved?
Yeah.
And in that steps that you just demonstrated, it says measurements in the last phase,
Yep.
it says measurements and verification. Do you measure ahead of time against some number that you're gonna measure later
Yes.
against? 'Cause I didn't see that in that.
So so we, in that preliminary, we do your baseline. So we'll get an
Where do
understanding
you do that? What phase of that?
in our preliminary, in our first step.
Preliminary,
Yes,
okay.
in the
So
very
you will
first.
record those actual measurements that you're gonna use later on to
to
compare against.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep,
Understand.
we need that kind of upfront before, that's part of our very first step is let's
Okay.
analyze
Okay.
where you're at now.
Mhm.
A huge part of that for us is to see how the building's operating, because if you're operating too good in these days with the building ages that we typically have, chances are you're short on ventilation then.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how we can tell, hey, there's a ventilation problem because you're operating very well. Well, the age of the building, the structure of the building, the makeup of the building just doesn't match that.
Mhm.
So that really tells us where we need to dive in on
Okay.
each building. And yes, a lot of times will that look like an increase in energy at the end of the day? Sure, because we're going to be adding ventilation that are now up to codes. The way we offset that is through other savings and then potential federal
Okay.
grants. We can skip to the next slide. This is kind of a background of other places that we're in New Hampshire. We have a very strong standing in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in Maine, and northern New England. EEI has long-term relationships with Nashua, the city of Portsmouth, schools of Portsmouth, Manchester, we have been in for a long time, Keene, the city of Auburn, a lot of the surrounding southern Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont cities, and where we've been working with for a long time. You can go to the next slide. Kind of breeze through.
Technical
That's fine. I'm kind of
challenges.
breezing through some of the beginning ones.
While she's figuring out the slide, I saw you said you mentioned construction as well.
Yes.
Do you do that in-house or do you work with a partner?
We work with a partner and that we do some of the design in-house. We have a good construction background with our engineers. So we mix it. It depends on what it is.
Sure.
We try to do as much in-house as possible to save costs. And then we'll verify it with some of our third-party architects that we work with. But a lot of that upfront work is typically done in-house on, this is what we would need for renovation, make sure we're matching building codes. And then when it's looking to get kind of, hey, here's some stamped things, that's when we would bring in our partners.
Appreciate it.
This is an example of the success that we've had in Manchester over the past few years. The reason it stopped at 2018 is because then ESSER funding became available and we started increasing the ventilation. We started putting in proper ventilation and replacing their old end-of-life units. Now we're looking at currently creating a new baseline for them. So an adjusted baseline to see where that curve now matches with the energy savings, because naturally they went up in usage on the electrical side.
Is this net of the measures?
Yes, yep, the total measures that we've done in
This
Manchester.
includes amortization of the measures.
Yes, yep. We've,
Let me ask you this, though. This is in dollars, and of course, that's what
Yes.
most people like to see.
Yeah.
But as we know, energy costs are variable.
Yep.
Every year they're different.
yes,
And what I would like to see is comparison of the actual energy use
yeah,
numbers with the dollars.
Yeah.
Because it's very possible that some of these drops may have to do with the cost of energy
of course, yeah.
that dropped, and not because of energy.
A lot of
efficiency.
the original drops were as we converted over from oil to propane and
Okay,
reduction, so those we
those
can
are good.
show.
Yeah, those would
Yeah,
be
so
good to
we'd be
see,
able
yeah.
to see the difference, and we probably would do it, I think the biggest way to understand it would be in MMBTUs, because that's the energy usage.
Right.
So
Mhm.
you'd be
Yep.
able to see it's one solid unit we'd be using, so we
Right.
would probably do it in MMBTUs to get
okay.
a real understanding.
Thank you.
And what were some of the big drivers you mentioned, converting out of oil?
Yes, during those first 5 years to 6 years, a huge driver is gonna be LEDs and on the electrical side, and then conversions to propane usage from old oil boilers, consolidating some of the ventilation system. When you originally design buildings, you're designing one, a lot of the equipment is over designed, so you're over ventilating spaces. And if you have a building that's 30+ years old, the way you design that building is very different than what we would put in that building today. You have insulation changes, you have structure changes, you have occupation use changes. There's so many changes that you really can't come in and say, we're going to do a 1-for-1 replacement. You have to do a brand new energy model for that specific building in today's world and say, this is what we would design. So a lot of that also contributes to properly sizing equipment for those buildings. Even on the mechanical side, a lot of the boilers are oversized for buildings. So that helps. We're decreasing what you're putting in, but you're actually covering the usage that you need. So that contributes to it as well. Controls upgrades is a huge portion when you have old pneumatic systems or outdated controls and you put in a system that can properly operate your equipment, you're going to get great savings. I mean, not that it's great for the customer, but I personally love when I come in and see pneumatics or a system that's not working, because I know for a very expensive measure, you're going to get a decent payback, because we're going to be able to turn off that equipment. We're going to run it for what's actually being occupied and not what it's designed for. We're going to be able to set times of when it turns on and off and set schedules for holidays and weekends and games if it's turned on. So a lot of the, I mean, I can go on now with the control savings.
But
that
I'll
you
just
can get.
mention, I didn't share with this committee, over the last 4 years, we have with E&E, we've gone through almost, I would say 80% of our buildings, we now have
Yep.
controls in, which they did not exist before, which is really unbelievable. So we're doing that,
Yeah.
which is great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
taken a lot of time and a lot of money, but
it is, controls are not cheap. So you have to chip away at them as you do the projects and change them out. So.
Tracy, did you have a question?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I missed the beginning and that's coming in late. Did you just say that you would recommend going from like oil to propane?
Yes.
Rather than electric?
Oh, so I mean, it depends. If you're gonna use fossil fuel, then yes, we would suggest go to propane, but it's also an analysis to go to electric. It depends on the building. There are buildings where I'd say, yeah, electric heat is probably the best way to go. I'm a little biased in the sense that I always believe in New England, you do need some form of redundancy. If you, with the heat, if you even have a very efficient, smaller backup boiler, depending on the operation, maybe it's just because it's changing so fast on the electrical side that out of a security for what we do, I like having redundancy. But yes, electric heat does have a significant savings on the fuel side. There's a lot of buildings that we've seen that have done that oil to propane conversion over the last 5-7 years. Then in that case, I'd say, let's go electric heat. You have an operation of mechanical system that's pretty efficient. We'll use it as backup and we'll use the VRF. But I think VRF systems, the variable flow heat pump system on electric heat, those operate the most efficient, kind of down to 32 to 25. They're not at their most optimal when you hit the negatives. In New England, we hit the negatives a lot. So that's where you do benefit from having a backup propane. So, and
Makes sense.
again,
Yeah,
all
I
utilities
think-
are volatile. You don't know where the cost of electric is. And if that does continue to go up and you have, it's a trade-off. So it's really an analysis based on the building and what you're looking for.
Great, yeah, I just, I would think the end goal would be electric because propane, natural gas, I mean, the studies say they're as bad as coal, given the whole life cycle of. the
And I mean, in
issues.
Vermont right now, you can't install a propane boiler. Their
Interesting,
sustainability goals are getting aggressive where you do electric heat and a lot of that is going to geothermal. So solar is also a way to kind of solve that. Is you're now operating on electric heat and you have solar, then yeah, you're that's gonna match that curve.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Yeah. You can go to the next slide. Oh, I think the picture lost here for Little Harbor. Sorry about that. This was just an example of some of the work that we've done. We did all the energy upgrades and a renovation for Little Harbor Elementary. And then the $10 million renovation project and energy upgrades for Don Darrow. It included removal of the asbestos ceiling, new sprinkler and fire system and installation. Kind of this shows, I mean, you see what we did there, and it all does kind of show that it ranges from sprinkler systems and fire alarms to LED lighting and casework, from ADA to safety. It's anything, we really focus on anything that has to do with the existing building, because you can use other measures to help pay for and offset the cost of some of the large capital items. You're not going to find many grants or federal funding that can help pay for ADA or casework throughout the building. But if you combine it into a comprehensive project, then you're at least going to offset those costs with some federal grants, some energy savings, some rebates through the utility companies, and you pay it off, you know, with a lower interest rate. So it's an alternative approach to take.
So looking at this list, a very small amount is actually energy related.
Yep. Yeah,
So you're
well,
saying the way to do these projects usually bundle them with other things that you need to do anyway.
yes.
And part of that is the energy.
Yep. A lot of times when we're looking and evaluating the projects, we show kind of, here's the most energy focused project, like where can we maximize these energy savings and rebates? And then where's a more comprehensive approach where we can throw in some of the additional items that don't have energy savings? And that does a good job of showing it's not that much of a cost difference when you, for the yearly payment or in the scheme of the project, if you kind of balance the two. But a lot of schools and a lot of municipalities nowadays say we just, we want 1 to 2 projects that's solely energy focused for our community. And then we do find that we find, hey, where can we capitalize the most on this and start with that energy project?
And I think like in the case of Little Harbor, in order to do what you were doing, you had to mess with the ceiling tiles and do those other
Yes.
things. So that
Yeah.
it kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we go for federal grants, I love to live in the gray area. I say when we're going for federal money, that on grants or rebates that we can get, if it's for HVAC or whatever, if it's something that touches that classroom, that office, that building, I try and wrap it into it to say we have to get this done with it, because you're now impacting any part of that building. And again, knock on wood, it has so far worked out. So we try and maximize go big or go home on the rebate side to get the best free money that we can. You go to the next slide. New Franklin Elementary, another example. This was a phased approach of looking at kind of holistic starting in 2012, did some low hanging fruit. That was an energy savings only project. So that entire project was paid for by energy savings. In 2012, that was much easier to do than nowadays, because inflation has unfortunately impacted a lot of being able to pay for things by energy savings. And especially with ventilation, because that's a huge need now, and that increases your energy uses. 2018, we added ventilation at school. There was 0 ventilation in that school prior. They had to open windows to get ventilation. And I think, as you guys know, and it's right by the highway.
Yep.
So that was pretty difficult for the teachers to, if they wanted fresh air, you're also by the highway. So that was a very good project for that school. And in 2021, 2020, we added VRF, variable refrigerant flow, as the primary heating blue. So that's one building that we did for fully electric, to reduce the fossil fuel and improve overall air quality. You can go to, and that was a reduction in 42%.
It seems that the ventilation issue also coincided pretty much a year later with COVID.
Yeah. So, yeah, the timing of that
Yeah.
worked out pretty good for.
Yeah.
For COVID. Otherwise, it probably would have been an emergency replacement in
Right,
COVID.
right.
Because there's no way I think parents would have allowed kids to go
Exactly.
back to
No
school if they knew
ventilation.
that there was no ventilation and you couldn't open the windows.
Yep.
Did they install bipolar ionization there as well?
I don't know if we did ionization there afterwards.
Okay,
I would have to ask Mike. Yeah, I'd have to ask Mike if we did ionization there.
we've done that
after
throughout this building.
Yeah, for the most, I want to say probably because most schools who either had new ventilation or needed to improve. But it's newer ventilation, so it would have been up to code
Right.
anyways. But I don't know if we did ionization there. Next slide whenever you. So now we get into some of the observations that we've seen for these buildings. We are pretty early in some of the presentations on the city buildings, but we did want to present at this time just to give you an update on who we are, what we've done, and how we're looking at these buildings moving forward. This building is a two-pipe changeover heating and cooling system, which sometimes has its issues because you're talking about the whole building is either heating mode or your cooling mode. So you get 2 changeover days a year. You say, hey, now we're closing in October 1st, we're gonna switch over to heating mode. But we're still having weeks that are warmer. A 4-pipe system allows each individual space to have local control. So you're not getting complaints. You can have more control over that heating and cooling simultaneously versus saying to everybody, today's the day, bring your jackets or don't.
This may be the latest in the year that we've, I think actually, it may have been this week where we just switched over
Yeah.
to heat from cooling, because we've had some very warm weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of this building is under ventilated, so we would want to increase that ventilation, but there are ways to do that. Utilizing the existing system and making it just more efficient while also increasing your ventilation load. And Adam, feel free to jump in. I know you've
Yeah.
done a lot of,
I will.
yeah.
Some of the louvers on the front of the building, you can see they're either undersized or they're blocked up with the unit vents under the windows. That's obviously, contributing to the lack of ventilation throughout the building.
This building used to be a hospital, so you have a lot of mix of ventilation systems that are working against each other, working at the same time. So trying to fix that, it really has been a fix what's broken method. It doesn't have to be kind of bit off all at once. You can do a phased approach to get everything on the same style system. But it is kind of, you have a lot of different systems that are going through this building.
And ventilation is extremely poor in this building. This sound that you hear right now this might be the only room that you'll hear this sound in, of air actually moving. Conference room A, Portsmouth room, and the council chambers have their own dedicated system, but the rest of the building, you do not have air movement. In some cases, there's zero, absolutely zero.
Yep.
When I first met your colleague, Mike Davies, he has, obviously, like you, has extensive knowledge in this. I had to write down a quote from him. He said, "This is the most challenging building he's ever seen in his career." And that I had to write that down. because-
It is. It's a very challenging building because it was designed differently than what the building's used for on a large scale. Not saying we're gonna take an elementary school and go to a middle school or an office space and turn it into communities. Like, you're looking at a very different use building with the same design that you had for a completely different operation. So to make this the more efficient over time to the most efficient it can be, it really does take a capital plan and a big picture look of saying, how do we start? What's the best approach? Do we phase it? How do we bite off certain chunks? Do we go section by section, system by system? So that's where I think the energy modeling that we do really will benefit this building. That takes into account everything in the existing building. And then we'll put in the parameters for our new designs and see what your cost of operation will be, what our cost of install will be, and have the options to say, this is what we would recommend. Sometimes that's not close to kind of where you guys are thinking financially. So then this is, how we would do it, but let's reevaluate to get it to where it works. And this building really is a case study for
Before
energy
we
modeling.
leave this building, just so everyone is aware, the 2-pipe system that we have, you've all heard of the mold situations we've had in this building and the condensation. The 2 pipes happen to be black iron pipe, and they're wrapped with a pipe insulation. And there's a lot of vertical pipes that go up chases, and when we have, 52-degree cold water traveling through that pipe within a warm cavity, you can imagine the condensation forms very quickly. And we have found, the insulation, we've been trying to restore it. We've taken out thousands of linear feet of old black iron pipe, and we're replacing it with new insulation. But we have found situations where there'll be in 1 inch of exposed pipe, whether it's a valve or a corner. And it has created gallons of condensation that just run down the wall. And, the nightmare is how much of that pipe is within the walls that we can't get,
Yeah.
see, reach. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so the two pipe system is really, it's awful. And without the ventilation drying the air out, dehumidifying, it's,
Yeah, it's working against each other in a sense.
All right, and again, apologize if you already covered this. In terms of the IRA credits, rebates, whatever. Is there a time limitation? I know some some of the ones I'm working on, 44 months, you have to have the money spent. So that's the first part of that question. The second part is, how competitive, is, if you go in for those grants, are you fighting against a lot of other folks trying to get that money?
Yeah, so for the first part, there is no, in a sense, that once you submit the project application, if it's solar, I guess we'll start by, if it's solar, you have to submit an interconnect application to make sure that the system you design is gonna work on that system, that you have enough space for what you've designed. Once that's approved, then you do the project, and once it's complete, that next tax year, we'll submit the project. We work with a third-party tax consultant, and they would help you on submitting the project. Then you get that tax credit, but it's more of a rebate. So there is no time deadline. It's just when you finish that project, whatever calendar year it is in, that next tax season is when you would submit for it. And then the second part, sorry, what was the second?
Is there a lot of
Oh,
competition?
competition. No, because this is a tax
Okay.
credit, so, no,
Okay.
there is no funds, like, it's not a rebate program incentive where it's, you have you have enough until it runs out.
Okay.
This is strictly based on, this is your tax credit. The only caveat that I don't think will come into play, but I do want to say just for our sake, is you never know in an election year how long this program will go. The election year can change things. Your grandfathered in, of course, this year, and I would be very surprised if even next year is affected. But an election year really throws things up in the air that I can't say for sure, after 2025, 2026, it's not gonna either decrease or change. That is an unknown. So that's
Thank you.
also.
Yeah.
Go to the next one. Some of the city hall energy savings are the transformers. There's a lot of efficiency improvements that can be made with transformers when you upgrade them. In some of the older styles, it's a quick payback item that when we see older transformers, it's let's replace them and you get a lot of energy savings.
And it's definitely a quick turnaround time with, a brief shutdown and an install. These are, like Harry was saying, some of those low hanging fruit items. These are, you're putting together that bigger project. These are some of those sort of no brainers that you say, yeah, let's throw those in. We can install them quickly and the payback comes back pretty
Can you explain what those transformers are? What kind of transformers? What do they do? And where do they?
Step down.
So those are step down transformers here.
Step down, okay.
and we upgraded our electrical system a couple of years ago with our $1 million generator and some new transformers. But other buildings will definitely need the same. Our current generator will power this in every single circuit of this complex in the event of a power outage. Right, which is amazing.
Next, slide, please. Natural gas boiler system, the boiler system was 2013, 2014, and it was on natural gas, so the boilers probably still have some life left, but could be used for replacement for updated efficiency. And the entire building, again, is a 2-pipe system with only heating and cooling, so that would benefit from an upgrade to go to a 4-pipe system or a different system that's more efficient. Next slide. Chambers building, this ventilation system lacks energy recovery, and also I think from the picture you can tell that the original unit was probably drastically oversized because you can see the platform that it was on, and now the new unit is much smaller. So the new unit is DX cooling and it's not connected to the chiller. So you have two systems working against each other. This is its own cooling system. And then you also have a different system throughout the building that's also working on its own process. So I'd probably talk a little, do you have anything else to add to that system?
No, go ahead, sorry.
Can somebody explain what the Chambers building is? Where is this?
So we're made up of 3 buildings here. Cybolt building. It's the Chambers building is the building you come in, main entrance. We also
Okay.
sometimes call that the admin building.
Okay,
And then the hospital thing. So it's, I think it's 1928, 1940 something, and 1963.
okay.
I used to have all those dates exactly, but it's a memory, but.
Yeah, so you have this unit that is its own DX cooling on the side, and then you have a chiller that it's connected to the other unit. So you have 2 different systems that are working against each other.
Right, which kind of goes back to how we like to look at the building as a whole and make sure that we're not, you know,
Right.
installing systems that are fighting against you. We like to look
Yes,
at it as a whole.
yes.
So, in, like Carrie said, just by looking physically at a unit from 30 years ago to now, they may be significantly small. They may actually be physically larger, but if you can see that giant trapezoid under there, that's a curb adapter. So the white at the very bottom, that was roughly the size of the unit that was there previously. And that curb adapter was custom built because I've never seen one in a catalog quite like that. For this unit was landed there. So most likely when this unit was selected, a very small area was taken into account for replacement as opposed to the broader picture. So, you know, there's a lot of items like that, the sort of the piecemeal and the Band-Aid fixes throughout the space.
Right, so and one of the things that we'd want to check on this is since you did have such a large unit there before and now a smaller unit. And yes, equipment nowadays is a little bit more condensed, but is that unit now too small for that space? Are you under ventilated for that space? So we'd want to check on where is the appropriate ventilation for what area that's serving.
You know, I've discovered from looking into things like this that basically older designs, one of the problems that has happened when I worked in vacuum technology and stuff like that is that, 10, 20 years ago, even the design of the pipes and the configuration of the infrastructure has a significant impact on your need. You know, you can have a lot of elbows in there, and every time that happened, instead of taking out that infrastructure and putting in a more efficient infrastructure, people would just increase the size of the pump
Yeah.
because you're losing so much, you know?
I'm sure.
So I wondered if when you guys do these evaluations, whether you look also at the design of the system itself, whether it's, when you're saying like over-designed,
But why is it
yeah,
overdesigned?
do you need that big a unit to begin with? Can that be achieved by better design?
Yeah, we look at the whole from start to, we look at the whole design from start to end unit, because when we want to approach it, we want to design it exactly for that space and know why was it sized this way in the first place. Most from what we see age wise, older units and systems engineers at the time tended to go bigger to kind of cover the building. But
Yep.
that's now a lot of wasted energy.
Yep.
That wasn't really a key concept when they were designing with the energy. So
It wasn't even really that long ago, maybe even 15 years ago, engineers were designing to
Yep.
130, 135% of what they needed, and that was to cover their
Mhm.
bases. It was almost the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish
Right,
by guaranteeing,
right.
you know, I don't want to call it minimal uses, but the, you know, most efficient usage.
Essential, yeah.
And they were wanted to guarantee that, well, we're gonna make this space nice and cold for
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
right? So,
You get real cold temperatures in here, but
so.
What's a DX cooler?
so it's a coil in the unit that provides cooling.
Okay, so you're saying it doesn't operate on the central system, it's.
It's its own standalone system. Yes, when you put a DX coil in it, then it's now its own cooling system.
What likely happened here is what's very common with taking care of all these buildings is, well, let me back up. One of the wonderful things about what we're doing is if we can get ahead of the maintenance, because when things fail here, there's they must be repaired immediately. And at
Immediate,
times,
yeah.
you wish you could put in
Yes.
something, but pipes are freezing as you're waiting and temperatures need to be brought back up immediately,
Yeah,
whether it's
yeah,
heating or cooling.
yeah.
So, yeah, so if we can break that cycle of rushing to replace things, we have to get what's on the shelf and get it going again.
Yeah.
The analogy is we're rebuilding a car as it's going down the road. We can't stop. We can't pull over.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yes, we do, which is part of the process that we like to present is the immediate needs, but also having that list of capital planning. So everybody knows here's what's coming up. It's not necessarily a shock in 2 years. If you bring, hey, this ventilation needs to get replaced, here's why. versus the emergency repairs. And then either you'll say, well, why does this have to get done now? Where was the maintenance on it before? It's educating on this needs to get updated because an emergency repair is a lot more expensive than doing it all at once. You have, even if the cost is the same, you now have a new mobilization of a team. You have added a rush cost. So any emergency repair is going to cost a percentage higher than what you would do if you
Yeah.
planned it 6
Yeah.
months out.
And if it's a bad enough emergency, you might have to, you know, that whatever you're replacing, whether it's a boiler, or water heater, or rooftop unit, you might be forced to install whatever you can get your hands on. Lead times on these
Yeah.
get a little long and,
Sure.
you know, and would, again, taking a comprehensive look at the entire building, it typically puts, it resets the building in a lot of ways where now the lifespan of all of these items are sort of on the same thing. So someone like Joe isn't chasing himself around, well, this unit's 20 years old, this one is 5, this one is brand new, and then things are failing at different times. It helps really with the maintenance and the upkeep costs as well.
Go to the next slide. There's older abandoned HVAC equipment in place. So we kind of touched on this. It was designed in a different era for different use. So it's working against each other in a lot of the systems. And like we had mentioned, the outdoor air intakes are now blocked off, where old unit vents used to be. So you see that a lot in older buildings when they change the systems, they just block those off. But there's other ways to do that are more efficient for the building. And then it's also just removing some of that older end of life equipment instead of leaving it in place so that we have room. Go to the next slide. So now going into kind of some of the examples of what are the best long-term options for City Hall, there's 4 kind of off the bat that we would want to evaluate financially and efficiency wise. Variable refrigerant flow throughout with energy recovery. That's fully electric heat, but it gives you that local thermostat control for every single space. It's essentially, layman's terms, I like to say like a heat pump system on steroids, like you're getting a lot more use out of it and you have a lot more flexibility with the system itself. And that also has an energy recovery component to it. The other option would be a 2-pipe system with added ventilation. The reason that it kind of goes back and forth is we see a lot, you have older heating systems and you have older ventilation, but you want to go to electric heat or you want a most efficient. So that would be VRF. But VRF doesn't tackle your ventilation needs. So you would be spending this upfront cost on a VRF system, which now tackles your heating and cooling, but you still have these up costs that you're going to have to address with your ventilation. So doing them at the same time, VRF with energy recovery is efficient because you're now doing ventilation plus your heating system. 2-pipe, that's why the 2-pipe and the 4-pipe system also have added ventilation, and you should be tackling that ventilation system while you're looking at the heating. And then also evaluating is geothermal with the tax credits available. Is that something that's worth looking into? Does the community support a geothermal system? Does the community support looking at solar? Or should we just see those evaluations and understand the costs? Yep.
Are these generally mutually exclusive or are there some, combinations? that
There's
we're-
combinations, yeah. So that's really what it comes down to. I should have put it in here, but I have a picture of how we do our options, and we put the options in, and then some of kind of if you combine them, how that looks, and then what your cost of operation is going to be. So there is ways to mix and match all those based on, and the energy model for us tells us what the best operation is, and then we kind of bring that to you guys with that information. If you go to the next slide, this shows the available option 1 with VRF and energy recovery. It's similar to what we did at New Franklin School. And that again shows that you have one condenser with multiple different heads on it, and you're looking at simultaneous heating and cooling with the energy recovery system. Another option sometimes, and Adam, correct me if this building might not be the best option for it, is doing energy recovery with dehumidification.
It could be, a lot of these, there's a piece that we also have taken, we've got the energy modeling, we've got the, the financial aspects, but we have to look at the physical construction of the building as well, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at, I'm looking at a building a little bit north of here, and it's a lot of pitched wood frame roofs, right? So the idea of rooftop equipment is essentially disqualified, right?
Sure,
Could
yeah,
we, could we
that-
do something? Could we really mess around with that roof? Yes, but so we're kind of
Yeah.
leaning towards potential, strictly VRF option.
And that's why, that makes sense. So that's why we wouldn't be doing some of the cooling through the year. We would be doing it with the VRF system because of the layout of that building. A lot of times we do try and do energy recovery with dehumidification and then a new heating system to get your cooling and heating. But yes, if the building itself really kind of
But it-
makes that decision sometimes for us.
But it's possible. We, anything's
Evaluate-
truly
Yeah, like you
possible.
said, we look at which one's the best.
Can you
you-
tell me again what VRF is?
Variable refrigerant flow.
Variable refrigerant flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a commercial heat pump, you can think of that. Right?
Yes, yeah, you use those in larger spaces than if you were to say, hey, my home is doing a heat pump design or an
Yeah.
office space. If you
Okay.
have multiple spaces, you want to go for a VRF.
Okay.
Explain the, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, the Historical Society, the old library, during the era grants, they put in a VRF system. Essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same.
It is, yeah, it's more efficient when it comes to those larger
Mhm.
spaces.
And you said energy recovery,
Yes.
how does that work?
Yeah, the energy recovery is, when you install a new air handler, we'd like to have an energy recovery wheel. So you're not taking 100% outdoor air and then conditioning it up to room temperature. You're mixing the air from the return. So you're getting already conditioned air at a higher temperature to mix with the outdoor air. So you're using a lot less energy to get the temperature that you're delivering to that space. That's obviously during, the colder seasons where it really does make a difference. You're not going from outdoor air temperature to what you're delivering to the space. You're taking that return.
So your exhaust air is being used to recover some heat
Yes,
or incoming air. Is
right.
that
You're
the idea?
mixing it together to, instead of you have a much smaller delta to heat
Yeah,
up than you're
yeah.
going from outdoor to indoor space.
The turbocharger.
Next slide. Again, City Hall, VRF solution, the pros, it's high, it's efficient, low fuel or no fuel costs that you're gonna be spending. It's easy to retrofit in a phased construction approach or all at once, and it's much better than what you're getting now. The cons are the lifespan of that is not as long as you would be getting with a energy recovery ventilation system or new condensing boilers. You wouldn't be utilizing the existing chiller that you have that was just replaced 2 years ago. A lot of times that's a con because that's a newer piece of equipment that you just invested in. And there's going to be much more significant refrigeration pipes. And right now, and moving forward, the EPA does keep changing the allowable refrigerant, which is it's getting hard when they're in this changeover process to find. We're in this limbo of equipment. Do we want to get the older refrigerant or do we want to wait because it's not out yet for the newer technology? So that poses a little bit of an issue. It's not one that we can't work around, but it is something that is
It's on the threshold of changing like very.
Right now,
right,
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, it's in where you can't, I think we're coming up on where you can't really buy the older stuff. You
Yeah.
don't want to, but then the new stuff isn't out yet.
Right.
So you have to get the older stuff and operate on the older refrigerant, knowing in just a few months that refrigerant's gonna be.
Hmm.
And so
And is there a salvage value on a relatively new chiller?
you could probably move it to another building. We do reutilize a lot of equipment, boilers and air handlers. If we find an appropriate building for that size, you can reuse it somewhere else. So that is something we've evaluated. We do that a lot with schools. If a district just put in a new piece of equipment, we move it to another building. Or if they're planning a renovation but need an improvement now, we say, let's put this in knowing, in just a few years, we're going to take that new piece of equipment and relocate. Actually, we're doing it now. One of the schools close by, they did some rooftop ventilation equipment that was undersized, and we're probably going to be redoing that and moving it to a different space. So you can reuse equipment. You just have to find where it fits the best.
Got it.
I should know the answer to this, but I haven't come across it before. When refrigerant changes and equipment is changed out, can you reuse your line sets or does it get contaminated with the old?
I think
Hmm.
in
Well, that's where the work is, right?
Yeah.
Changing all the line sets.
Mhm.
So high level answer is yes, because those systems can be purged and cleaned, but that's easier in a small run, 20, 30, 40 feet worth of refrigerant.
Yeah,
You're trying to purge that, you know,
100 feet.
a couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
It can be done. You're
Yeah.
you're gonna have it under pressure to purge it for potentially days, or how different is the new refrigerant from the old refrigerant? That's the problem, is we don't know what it's going to
Right.
be, so there may be. I know mechanical stuff, I know some electrical, I'm not a chemist by
Yeah.
any means, so.
Yeah.
So that I can't speak to, I
Mhm.
don't know if there would be some. If there would be mixing allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, I
don't know.
think right now there is a lot of unknown on the new refrigerant.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been used, so a lot of the installers and contractors like we've talked to, it's.
I don't think your
Where
pipe
we
sizes
make
would
it
change
work,
though.
yeah,
Yeah,
No, if it were able to be purged, your infrastructure is there.
because this option is something that we've considered and we've priced for this building, and it's. Brace yourself, it's $8 to $10 million to put this system in.
The VRF,
for this, yep,
but what would the operating savings? be?
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yep.
The 10-year payback.
as long as the refrigerant doesn't change.
That's- And it is changing over shortly, so we know it's coming up. And that's something we plan for because it's happening everywhere now. You have a changeover refrigerant while you have a massive push for electrification. So this issue is, everywhere is dealing with how we do this. So it's gonna be able to have a transfer. It's just I think waiting it out and seeing where we go at some point. Go to the next slide. And this option would be keeping the existing two-pipe system and then adding ventilation to all areas. That's probably the lowest cost to get new ventilation, but you're still gonna have that two-pipe system. And you'll be running on fossil fuel heat still, so it's more of your low cost to get ventilation. Maybe if you phase it, this would be, hey, let's keep the existing system, let's just get ventilation in first. And then down the road, change out the two pipe. This would be a option if you wanted to take that phased approach, I think.
So this doesn't say energy recovery, so this,
No, it would be an energy
would- so
recovery.
they're
Yes,
all-
anything we install now would be an energy recovery. I don't think we wouldn't install something really unless we made a strong argument to somebody to say, let's go energy recovery.
Okay.
Next slide. And then the option to add a 4-pipe system, which would be repiping the building, to allow for more control for the heating and cooling set points. And then also adding ventilation. So be doing that VRF 4-pipe system.
What would the approximate cost of the 4-pipe solution be? Is that significantly more than the
The
previous
2-pipe?
previous number that was thrown out?
Then, no, I think the previous one, that would probably be right around, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a 4-pipe system would be in that ballpark of what you just said. 2-pipe is significantly less, yes. But for a building of this size, yeah,
And what we've been doing, back to, having to keep this system up and running. All of the fan cooler units that are scattered throughout are slowly, one at a time, they're dying. They're way beyond their life. So we're buying them half a dozen or a dozen at a time because they are expensive. And we're finding the ones that are in most need. And we're buying 4-pipe fan cooler units. So in the future,
You-
if we ever have, those won't go to waste.
No.
But still, it's not a real holistic replacement of everything. It's just trying to keep things running and what's the challenge to these other options is. Well, I mean, what I like about the VRF system is it's totally redundant. We don't touch the existing system necessarily, all the fan cooler units. We install the new system totally independent of
yeah.
the
it runs
existing
on its
system.
own.
Whereas the other options, once we start having to shut existing systems down, tie in.
You're talking about a lot more replacements down the
Yeah.
line, versus, the VRF you can put in and you're now
Done.
you're done, you're operating more efficiently. You have your solution for your heating and cooling, and you can address the rest of the system that you're not relying on as it goes. It's strictly backup at that
What-
point.
With the energy consumption of the VRF, what kind of efficiency gain would that be versus the four pipe?
I mean, the four pipes, do you have a percent?
I don't.
Yeah, the percentage of what, I mean, the systems run, the lack of efficiency in the two pipe is that you're operating all at once. And typically that means you have two systems running at the same time. Somebody's going to be turning on the heat if you have a backup heat with that cooling running. So you're cooling and heating in the same space just to get it up. Sometimes that's an issue. Or in the heating season, you have windows open. People are trying to create other alternatives for their space temperature with a two pipe system. Four pipe system, you're gaining efficiency, the same efficiency it is a little bit more efficient. You get a better rating. But you're also not operating multiple systems or fighting against human operation of windows or space heaters to set their temperature because, you know, person A and person B have very different body temperatures of where they like to be comfortable. So overall, that's where you gain a lot of the efficiency and the savings too, is you're operating on one system that's not fighting against another. And you do the controls also monitor that. So you tie those controls for that system
Right.
into the heating, where if you do need that backup heating on, it's not turning on until a certain temperature in one space. And that's a huge benefit. You're not now having heating system. Okay, it's October, this heating system knows to turn on, it turns on while you're running the VRF. They're programmed together to say once outdoor temperature reaches say 25, 20 degrees, now your backup heat kicks on.
Okay.
Go to the next slide. And then the Inflation Reduction Act, that's like we touched on, it's for solar, biomass, geothermal, and you can get up to, typically it's around 40, they say 50, but I think we'd be at 40% here to get that credit back. And in the beginning with both, you kind of submitted an application of interest for the solar at least, and that gets you, okay, they're interested in it, there is availability on the line system, and you can then submit it. We wouldn't move forward with an evaluation or a deeper evaluation on solar until that application was submitted, because the last thing you want is to say, great, it's good to go, here's a contract, and then all of a sudden you don't have room. So that's kind of a first step that we do in that evaluation.
That's the host utility.
Yeah, it's what's called the ISO study, the interconnect application is what we would submit. And I just did one for the city of Auburn for one of their large ice arenas, and it came back and said, you have some improvements to do. So it required us to pay for a second study. It was only $1,500. But what that allowed them to do is go and do a deeper evaluation, say we have to update your infrastructure. If the infrastructure upgrade is more than $30,000, then the customer has to pay for that infrastructure upgrade to get it on. If it's under $30,000, then the utility will pay for all of the equipment, and the customer pays just for, I believe, like the labor. You pay for a very small portion of that work, and most of it is covered. That study, luckily for us, came back where we were good. But yeah, so that's the next step. So that way we know foolproof if you were going to move forward with solar, you're good to go. Geothermal, we just follow the domestic guidelines and the requirements in the application to make sure that once we're done with the project, we can have our third-party consultant work for you guys, or we do it with them and submit for that tax credit. Next slide. This would be the 2-pipe or 4-pipe geothermal system. This solution definitely gets you more longevity of the heating solution. The guts of that system are going to last you a long time. What you're only going to be replacing are those end terminal units, which is the VRF system after a few years. So if you're looking at cost of operation over years, you're significantly reducing that repair cost as you go, because instead of replacing a 20-year-old boiler system or cooling tower, you're doing just a few heat pumps at a time as they go. So that's where the appeal of geothermal with this incentive, because the upfront cost is typically higher. But when you get this incentive, that's where the appeal comes in. because it's a much longer solution, much less replacement costs. Next slide. Like I said, our process is we're doing the assessment, our initial ones, and then we'll be working on, like the long-term planning at some of these schools right now. And our goal would kind of be to mesh the two for a long-term approach. Say, here's what we have, some ideas that we found with the city, and then here's kind of some of the solutions that we've seen, what would work for your buildings. And have our phase 1 audits complete by December of this year to present you with kind of that matrix, that overview of here's everything we see and here's some options with costing. Where's the priorities land from our recommendations, but more so where do your priorities land?
Great.
I think that's the last. Almost. Oh, we've been working with the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority to help bring some more rural development funds to New Hampshire. So this would be great if we anticipate they're hoping to do a $50 million rollout program in June, which would make more availability and grants and funding available to cities like Portsmouth at a very low interest rate, which would be great. We already get, lower interest rate in the tax exempt lease purchase, especially if there's banks who do it through a green loan. But to get a program through the Business Finance Authority where it would be specifically focused on communities like this and get a lower interest rate, that would be a significant savings. I know Vermont does some of the lower green interest rates down to in the 2s. I think recently there was one at 2.5 versus right now we're at 4.8 to 5 for a tax exempt lease purchase. So very excited about the opportunity that the Finance Authority could be rolling out in June.
Peter.
So Carrie, just a question about the finances and where the money could come from. We know that there's this federal money out there, the IRA and other programs. How does that fit into the program with New Hampshire Saves, for example, from the utilities?
You can.
Is
use
that an
both.
additional funding we could get through the utilities in addition to the IRA?
Yes.
Okay.
Not much then.
They don't counteract each other, no. Most of the programs allow you to use, like you said, they allow you to use those utility rebates because
Yeah.
in the scheme of whatever project you're doing,
Yeah.
it's a savings, it's good. But it's not gonna be life-changing in the project because you're still looking at utility funding, so it's gonna help, of course.
Yeah,
But they
but,
allow you
but
to
in the
double down.
example of LEDs, for example, it could be
Oh,
like 40%
yes, oh,
of the
LED, yes,
costs.
LEDs. is
LED labor
significant.
and parts.
Yeah.
So that's not small amounts.
No, and LED lighting, that really makes a difference if you're doing the LED projects. That's why a lot of times you combine LED projects with HVAC. Because it's a significant rebate you're gonna get there.
Right. But you could also get a rebate from New Hampshire Saves, as far as I know, for heat pumps.
Yep.
For gas
Yes.
consuming
Yep.
boilers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, and
Uh,
even if there's one for geothermal, you can do
Also
both and
get-
they don't counteract each other. Yep.
We're not doing anything but LED in every opportunity we get. We are actually surprisingly disappointed in the failure. The LEDs are failing very quickly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, we were,
I think it depends a lot on how that retrofit
Yeah.
is done, but if you are using some of the newer bulbs into an existing,
Existing
there's,
a dimmer situation or
yeah,
something.
no, these are new fixtures, even,
New
yeah,
fixtures.
yeah. We're
Yeah.
really surprised at the failure rate.
Are you returning them? Or-
No. we
Because I
haven't.
would, I
Yeah.
worked for a lighting
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And I returned every single bulb. It's at 10,000 hours. I got 1,000. Give me a new
Yeah,
bulb.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you promised me 10,000, all the savings. Come
I
on.
can appreciate the tracking and the logging. of
Oh,
that.
people don't do that. People don't do that. And that's why they don't know.
Yeah.
But you guys know because
Yeah.
you see it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was this building's the focus. Have you gotten far enough to know like all the savings are here pretty much or?
Not quite that far. So we were here a little bit this week and when I first get in touch with you, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Almost a month ago.
They're very early in this. in
So
the-
Oh,
we've
okay.
been poking around. So I was here recently with one of our engineers, one of our junior engineers was here and one guy was doing evaluation of all the lights and we took a really, really deep dive on all the mechanical systems here. We're working on putting together our findings and sort out. Well, I think each one of us went home with a couple hundred pictures, probably just short of 1,000 pictures each. So we're sorting through those and remember, where did we take that? Okay, yeah, we were in this area. So we're putting those findings together now. It's coming together.
So you're breaking in your kid engineer on the
Yeah.
most challenging
Yes.
thing.
It's the best way to teach you.
Throw him into the fire. No, we give him the lighting and he's pretty good at it. He's been working with us for the summers for a few years now, and he's pretty good at his lighting on it.
A
So
building like this, they're gonna touch on all aspects of different systems, so
yeah.
You
you're
would,
saving us time.
portfolio manager, do you do the benchmarking as part of the?
So we used to, and I've done a lot of that. My, I don't wanna say concern or the issue that I have with that is it sometimes can spit out a false number, especially for a building like this, because it can show you a high rating, but it's because you have a poorly operated ventilation system. And with older buildings, that's more and more we'd be using that and I'd be like, okay, so here's your score, but it's not accurate.
It's counterfeit.
So
Yeah,
the city
so-
did it years ago with all the schools. And they were gonna get a label for one of the schools, I won't say which. But you have to go through and have a PE look at ventilation and before they gave the label. it
Yes.
Turned out, that's where all the savings was. There was no
Mm.
ventilation.
Yeah,
But it can be helpful for identifying which.
it's great for
like, across
tracking.
a portfolio, yeah.
Yes, it's good for tracking utilities, seeing
Yeah.
what's there. Some customers still use it. Will they give us the access and you can see what's available? I haven't, probably just because of the time and having a staff be able to put in all that information has not been something
And I
we'll
thought
do.
the city had done it,
but-
no? Maybe they hadn't kept it up, I thought. I know Ken did it with all the schools and I'm not sure if he's kept it up in the city.
not
Peter
sure.
had an intern come in a few years back
It's a great
Yeah.
job.
and benchmark.
Turn every few
So they
years.
have a portfolio manager account, but they may not have.
Yeah,
come
I
up.
can look into that tomorrow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So Joe, I would like to really ask you to include Spinnaker Point in this audit evaluation. I think that is the most poorly efficient building in the whole.
I know you
We
love
don't
that.
own
I
it.
know you love that building.
We don't
It's
own
my
it.
least favorite.
Well, I understand it.
For all those reasons.
I
Yeah,
understand.
we
I
don't
am
own
a
it.
22-year user
Yeah.
of that building.
Yeah,
And just as an example, when I first joined as a member, it took 20 years until the electric receptacles didn't kick out every time you plugged in something.
well, they're all new now.
Yeah,
Got
that
it
happened
replaced.
during the COVID
Yeah.
thing. When the
Yeah.
COVID thing came and everything got updated, all of a sudden I could actually plug in a hairdryer
Yeah.
without the circuit tripping out. But it was only 20 years that it took to do that.
Yeah,
But the worst part of it, as you know, is the ventilation on the track and the ventilation in the men's locker room.
Yeah.
Which is non-existent essentially, and the heating on the track is so poor that in the wintertime, people are wearing winter coats on the track, walking and running.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, they're sweating up a storm.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I've done this a couple times going through various rooms with a thermometer and a humidity measurement.
Yep.
And you've got 60 degrees in one room, you got 70 in another, you got 80 in another, you got 80% humidity here, 20% humidity there. It's kind of a mess and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't own it, but we
Right.
have to maintain it, as you know.
Yep.
And we have to
Gym
fix
membership in
everything.
town, though.
And everywhere you look, there
Yeah.
are
The
portable-
compound's a problem.
I mean, hey, I might go there. You sweat more then.
No, that- that-
There you go.
That building is very challenging due to its.
I know, but according to the Recreation Committee's assessment of the needs for this city.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have 2 aquatic centers.
Yeah.
We only have 1 indoor pool, and that's in pretty good shape, over by the high school. And the other one we have is Spinnaker Point.
Right.
And it's mainly used by, people over 18. So a lot of seniors use it.
Yep.
And it's really popular and there's all kinds of things. And as you know, nowadays, who builds a pool?
Right,
There's a pool there that seniors use a lot.
Yep.
So it is an essential thing for the city.
yeah.
And because I think the lease is maybe 6 years or 7
I
years.
think we have 6 years
off,
left. We put, over the past few years, we put $1 million into the building.
I
and
believe it.
That's tough in a
And
building
you're gonna
that's
put
not ours.
another 2 or 3 million before the lease is up.
Well,
So what
that's
I'm
up to the,
saying-
that'll be up to the council.
But
to-
what I'm saying
yeah.
is let's have a complete energy audit of that building and see what do we have here? What would we need to do?
Yep.
Because the Spinnaker Port Association wants to get rid of it. If we weren't leasing it, they would sell it, okay? And the city would be left with one single indoor pool, aquatic center.
Yep.
Instead of two. And I think it's salvageable, but there's a lot of work to be
Yeah.
done, as you know.
Yep. Yep.
So I'd like to see that incorporated in any work that these people do, if possible. And what about the senior center? Is that also on your list there?
Not right now. It's not, no.
It's relatively new,
Yeah,
so.
it's relatively new. But yeah, I mean, ideally, we'd be doing this, we'd be doing this as much as we can with a lot of it. But we were trying to identify the critical needs first. But I hear you. Obviously, we're a fan of this. We want to do it as much as we
I
can.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, you're gonna come back to us in December,
Yes.
come back to the city. Joe, where does that put that us for the CIP this year? Are we probably we're looking at the 26?
Yes, yeah, we're gonna be, we have a lot, we're still learning. We're still learning on.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have that information in time for.
Yeah.
The CIP. Necessarily.
Yeah.
We might know dollar amounts, order of magnitude dollar amounts sooner than later, before we know the details of exactly what the system is,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Typically for cities, when we've done CIP, it's kind of a budget amount, order
Yeah.
of magnitude in a sense, and that's something that you can use in your planning. And then as we dive deeper, we really try and stick to that. I mean, I can attest the city of Auburn held me to one of those budgets and we made it work. So we try to be as accurate as we can. And we're pretty accurate in our budgets. So that's, when we feel comfortable giving a number, that's kind of, hey, here's what you can plan on for it. And then we dive into kind of finalizing that and sticking to that budget.
Do we have input for Joe and this project? Do we want to speak to both carbon and cost reduction rather than just cost reduction and efficiency?
Overall, we tend to show both because in the solutions, even when we're increasing cost for ventilation, the way that we're doing it is reducing your carbon. And you can see it both ways. You can see an adjusted baseline. So we would say, hey, if you were operating to code, here's how much money you'd actually be spending right now. And then when you input a more efficient system, here's your savings. So there is a way to show savings based on the proper ventilation, because we would do it as an adjusted baseline. And a lot of times that's, if you were to do a lease, banks want to see that as well. We can that is realized savings. So you see both. You see, hey, here's what we're reducing carbon footprint wise. And we pretty much put it into kind of a pamphlet of trees, you're saving cars off the road, etc. But then also by this efficient system, here's the dollar you're saving, because if you were to be operating on a system that brought you proper ventilation, this is the delta.
I know that Mike shared with me, one of the final deliverables for a different municipality. I don't know if we can share that.
Yeah.
That
which,
that way you can see what the final product.
It is,
looked
I
like.
assume
You
it was,
scrutinize that. Okay, we'll share that.
I
with
assume
you.
it might have been City of Auburn, because that was one of the recent ones.
It was, what I didn't
Okay.
know is if that could be made, if that could, I don't know if the
Yes.
city of Auburn would allow that. to be
Yeah,
shared.
I've shared that with
Okay,
a
then-
few customers.
Be
as
public
well.
We have that and we will get
Public
that.
record.
And I'll send you, there's a few updated slides that I've recently done that will give a good representation of how you'll see the options and the cost of operation.
Right.
So I'll send you a few other PDFs
Right.
that will be helpful in, what you're gonna be seeing when you make these decisions, because I do want to stress that it's not as overwhelming
Yeah.
as I think it makes it sound. It is user friendly.
And Counselor, I'll send that to you and you can distribute it to your committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think as this develops and we get to budget questions, if this committee can be a voice.
Yep.
Advising the council.
Good.
Good, Carrie. I
Happy to
think,
do so.
like I mentioned before with the graph with the dollars,
Mhm.
I think if you guys present things always in BTUs and dollars, because BTUs are directly related to carbon emissions.
Yep.
Okay, and the dollars, of course, are directly related to dollars.
Yeah,
So
the
we
two
need to
lines,
know
only two
both.
lines on the
Two
back.
lines,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we need to see
Yeah.
both.
I know certain people look at one of the lines, so there's like, it's,
Yeah, yeah,
it's,
it can be misleading. I mean, today I went to get gas and I bought gas for $2.77, So
Where?
BJ's
There
Wholesale
you
Club,
go.
okay? So if I were to plot, my gasoline consumption
Yeah.
with dollars only, without the gallons.
right, you also take into account your BJ's card. You pay for the BJ's.
Let's factor that in.
Okay, let's add a penny. Let's add a penny to each gallon, okay? Granted, okay. But anyway, what I'm saying is we
Yeah.
need to see both because you don't know
Yes.
which is driving
Yeah,
the curve.
no, but it's true. And a lot of, when we guarantee the savings, we guarantee an MMBtu,
okay.
it's because of that exact reason is
yeah.
we can't control energy prices, nor do I want my
Right,
map to be set
right.
on escalating energy prices.
No.
BTUs is,
And really to the extent that any of the commodity usage trends are available, those are interesting.
yes, yeah, we oftentimes do updated, looks at that, so
Great.
can provide a few of those trends.
Do we know, Joe, if as these upgrades are made, if that is factored into the annual, I think it's the annual greenhouse gas inventory that the city was doing?
Yeah, there was did I forward that to you? Did I forward that to you today, actually? I might have, we have an older greenhouse inventory that was done.
A couple of years ago?
It was more than that. Time is really flying.
Okay.
So, we should be referencing that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so it's Counselor was mentioning, that can tie back into the cap.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not just dollars that we're
Right,
looking at.
we're also
Yeah.
achieving
Yeah,
a strategic. goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Great. Any other questions for Carrie?
Thanks for letting
Yeah.
us in.
Any
yeah.
other questions,
That
feel
was
free to reach out via
fascinating.
email. Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing, more about the high school, the middle school, the other
Yeah.
buildings.
Yes.
Obviously, this one is,
So the high school's not too old either. Nothing. goes on.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate your guys' time. I know it was long, but.
Yep.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.
thank you.
Yes, news relative, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, middle school, it's not so new anymore.
Goodness.
Like 10 years.
Safe travels.
Yeah, they redid it.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Tk you. That's a big project.
Project. and they
Great.
found-
So,
found things
okay,
that
Councilor
weren't
Tabor, I do have some information about the landfill thing that you were mentioning before, the solar issue with landfill.
Oh, yeah, right.
I've been working on that quite a bit.
Great.
So if you want me to, I can at some point. report on that.
We got a couple
Okay,
quick agenda
Right.
items. Let me just go
Okay.
back to our,
Taking your light bulbs back. It's really smile.
I took them back to Sylvania all the time. I said, what's going
I
on?
love that.
Are we getting this from GE or what? We're getting their seconds.
Other things on our agenda.
Wait,
that
it's
storage
60 years
program.
old before I had to
Yeah.
return them, and I had to return them when I was 15. Come on.
There you go.
Challenge roads, yard sign, that's it.
we'll do the battery storage program next meeting. But Herb, you've got some updates on the,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, just a quick overview on what we've been doing with NREL. So we wanted to kick the tires of the technical assistance program that NREL has. So we started out with asking them to take a look at 3 large energy consumers in the city, being our 2 wastewater treatment plants and the pump station in Madbury. And as we started working on scope with them, there isn't a lot of opportunity for solar at the 2 wastewater treatment plants. Obviously, Pierce Island doesn't have much much real estate for solar. And there will not be much left out at Pease because of future planned expansion. And so the ground space is limited there. Madbury does have space for additional solar array expansion. One thing that NREL is really interested in pushing right now is distributed wind and with municipalities. So we've kind of settled on them coming back and doing an assessment for us around, is there viability to put wind generation in any of those two wastewater treatment plants or out in Madbury at the water pump station? And also looking at battery storage, which is something that DPW was asking about. Maybe we can store and do some peak shaving and such, some sort of solution like that. So we're at the point where NREL has come back to us with a scope. They're ready to move forward to do an analysis, could be up to 60 hours. They're going to look at financial viability. They're going to look at funding. They're going to look at overall, what's the cost? What are pros and cons? And, this is their bread and butter. This is what they do, is these technical analysis, is viability analysis. And Counselor has asked Karen Kennard for names of city staff that should be involved in riding shotgun on this, not just Herb Lloyd from the Energy Committee. So we've got two names. We've got the
Eric Fiedler.
senior engineer, DPW. And the other gal is for the city is,
Stan, I can't remember.
yeah, and she's in over compliance legislation and compliance or something.
Yeah.
For the city. So I reached out to them today. I'll make contact with them. I'll probably just schedule a call with them, John,
Okay.
and just make sure. I know Eric he's been in one or two of the meetings that we've had over the past 6 months or so. But I'll just make sure both of them are fully up to speed and give us their sign off on moving forward, saying to NREL, yes, let's go ahead and start this technical analysis.
Right.
We don't know what they're going to come back with, but it is a good opportunity for us to dip our toe in the NREL pool and see what could they do for us. They piqued Peter Rice's interest in their waste to energy program. So NREL has really fired up and putting a lot of money behind their waste to energy research. And that's something that piqued Peter Rice's interest. So maybe there's,
It's a chapter 2.
there's a chapter 2, we'll see how this goes with them, with this technical analysis. And, maybe the next thing is going to be some waste to energy
Right.
evaluation that they do for us.
Right. And we'll send that scope of work out to all of you. It got to us too late for the packet, but
Yeah.
Was rooftop at Pease part of the evaluation? I heard you say ground space.
Yeah. So we met with Eric Peter from DPW, Eric Peter, and at the time Brian Getz. And the concern was that there wasn't a lot of contiguous rooftop space out at Pease.
Okay.
Something we could look at further.
Sounds good. And there will be a written deliverable, or there'll be
Yeah.
some deliverable from NREL.
Yes.
And this is more of a comment. Your comment about waste to energy and NREL's interest in waste to energy.
Yeah.
I'll just remind that thinking maybe back 16, 17, when we wrote the renewable energy policy, I believe the gentleman's name was Kennedy. He was on the school board at the time. I think he worked for waste management. He and Councilor Denton were pretty excited about an anaerobic digester at
Oh, yeah.
Pease. They tried to put it in the plan, and I think we're soundly told no way.
was that Patrick Ellis?
Ellis.
Yeah.
Ellis.
So we've had,
And so just for what it's worth,
yeah.
that's not a new idea.
No, and when we met with NREL, Peter Rice and Eric asked a lot of, and I think Brian Getz asked NREL a lot of questions about their kind of new waste energy program
Right.
and our past experience and things have changed, technology's changing quite a bit. And they were, I don't know if you remember some of the questions they were talking about things that were way over my head about some of these new technologies that
Right.
are being researched, but a lot of it's kind of at the university level. And nothing's ready. Some of these new technologies haven't been proven. And Peter Rice said, the city is not interested in being on the cutting edge of the waste, and
Yes, we've had experiments like that.
waste to energy.
UH has a trash to energy plant, don't they? Or they did
Yes,
for
they
a long
did,
time, yeah.
Well, trash energy is a different story, but.
I know, that's what I
So,
thought, that's
very
what I
inter-
thought I heard when they
Yeah,
said waste. to
okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're also, they talked during that one meeting, there was a lot of talk about PFAS destruction
Yeah.
and.
that was Peter's motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How do we burn that stuff out?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Got it.
but, and so
It's flame retardant.
Enreal has gotten in the middle of that too.
Yeah, yeah.
PFAS neutralization or
Yes.
destruction, so. I agree with the counselor that there could be a part 2.
Right.
And maybe a part 3, and as long as they're willing to consult for free.
Yeah.
Great.
That's right. It's a no cost to us.
Yeah,
and
yeah. that's
They've
good.
given us a nice tight scope document. I'll
that's
send
great.
that out to you and so we're underway on that. Questions for Herb on that?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
He's really, you guys have been pushing ahead with that. Green Challenge Report, I think you all saw that in your packet. Come from behind. But it's
Unexpected,
it's a
but-
long way to the clubhouse turn and the home stretch, so we've got a ways to go. I was gonna put that on the council agenda, but then I thought it could flip the other way. New Market's adding, for their little small size, they're proportionately adding some good numbers. But it's fun. There's a lot of banter back and forth between the town managers. Yard signs, Stephanie?
So last time I mentioned that the cost of yard signs, just in terms of price, they were about $7 a piece for the cheapest I could find. There, we talked about the environmental impact of lots of plastic or cardboard or plasticized cardboard. And I was trying to come up with what might be an alternative. And I would offer for your consideration. This is a handmade variation. But these pinwheels are 70 cents a piece.
Mm.
And it struck me that we could put a tag that had a call to action on it,
Mhm.
or some kind of identifier that tells somebody walking by in the street what it's all about. But that these would be, there are various towns and municipalities that do Pink Flamingo efforts as fundraisers. It draws attention, it gets people talking about it. So just this in somebody's front garden could well get more attention than a yard sign.
Yard sign.
They're metal, they're
Aluminum
thinly
probably or something.
sliced
Aluminized.
steel, according to the information.
Mhm.
Not that hard to believe, but they're metallic, so they would stand up to the weather, and then it's figuring out a tag. The idea is to either print a quick message on a banner or on a tag. So
Question, could you get a sticker printed where you'd wrap it around and stick it to
yeah,
itself?
that's a good idea, so that we're not
Yeah.
putting something on a banner, just make a tag that would fold on itself.
Yeah.
Then stick.
I,
That's great.
I love that idea.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think that's great.
neighbors talking to
of peace.
neighbors
Right.
about, well, what is that? Why did you
Right.
put that there?
Right.
We could, I think
it's a
it's a
windmill.
great photo op, and it's a windmill,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So,
Can we somehow harness that energy?
There you go.
You're the physicist, you
A
figure
little,
it
a little bulb on the back.
Well,
So we have 200 some odd who are now opted up in our program. So that's, $200 to buy, but I have 9 more of them right here.
Great.
If you would each like one to take home, but I will get the labels for next time, so you could take a look at that.
okay.
Thank you.
And we could just mail them to the people who opt up as a surprise and then get the conversation started and get a photo op and let it carry through.
Gotcha.
I'm glad you like it.
Okay. And Peter, you were gonna tell us about landfill.
Actually, just a brief bit of news in sync with the opting up issue. I think last time I reported the fact that those people who have solar 1.0, which is anything installed before 2017, would already be eligible to opt into Portsmouth Community Power. And at the time, when I tried to do that as someone who is 1.0, I was told, no, I can't do it because the solar thing hasn't been taken care of yet. So I contacted Mark Bollinger, who is actually the Director of Energy Programs and Projects at Community Power Coalition. And he confirmed to me, yes, no, I can do it. But that he also found out that the customer service people didn't seem to know about it. So when you called the customer service number, they would say, no, you can't do solar.
Right.
And he said he had checked with his people now in the meantime, and he assured me, because I tried to enroll, that I would be enrolled with switched over from Eversource to Portsmouth Community Power and get all my energy credits for my solar energy, the net meter portion. And it should be okay, he said. I said, well, okay, I'm not going to say anything to anybody until I actually see it in my bill. I haven't seen it yet, but I was told it is in the works and it's being done. And I know at the solar energy event we did at the library, there were a number of people there who also asked about this. And I know who they were. So if it turns out that this is in fact true, then I think we need to get the word out to people that yes, now you can do it. They will switch you over. And we get to participate in Portsmouth Community Power, even though we have solar.
Right.
Or even, and maybe there's a way of kind of giving some credit to how much solar is being generated by Portsmouth residents as part of this program, so we can get people excited about that. Maybe.
Well, thanks for your diligence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was one thing. The other thing I want to tell you is about the landfill, the Jones landfill.
Yeah.
So I read the report from 2015, 10 years ago, that was written about it's called Sagamore Creek Master Plan Final Report, Sagamore Creek Land, and basically about the landfill that was closed there. So after reading that, I contacted the Department of Energy and I asked, well, what would it take for us to be able to use that landfill, that capped landfill, and install a solar array there? And they gave me the form and the process of what to do and told me that I need to contact a vendor that could do this. So I reached out to Revision Energy, at first to a lady by the name of Izzy Quillette, who I sent the report to. Peter Bricks also gave me some other linked materials to send it to them to say, okay, this is where it is. This is what we'd like to do. And in the meantime, I've been put in touch with somebody who is actually the Beth McGuinn, who actually does the kind of site evaluation of walking the area and finding out what's there. She asked me what it's being used for now. And as far as I could tell from the report and from talking to others, right now there are trails there. There is, the high school uses it for cross-country training, I think.
Yep.
Otherwise, there are no other uses right now that I know of. So she wanted to evaluate what's on that property, how big the area is. And she is proposing to come back with a plan, and they've worked with the Department of Environmental Services before because they're doing the capped landfill in Jaffrey already as a project. So it's not to say that Revision Energy is the only vendor we need to ask about this, but it's a start. So so I'm trying to get her to come on site. And when I do that, I'll let everybody know who wants to be there, maybe with her together,
Okay,
to walk that site together and point out things that we're interested in.
great. Let me make sure that Peter Britz and others are aware.
Yes, well, Peter is definitely, because
But-
I mentioned it to him. Yeah,
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And she would come and give us an evaluation and say,
right.
these would be
This
the
is
next
what we
steps.
could do. Yes, that's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our questions are, could we, if we put some solar generation there, could it be behind the meter for the high school?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Which would be greatly beneficial.
I think the Jaffrey landfill is also set up that way that it's feeding the city's needs or the town's needs.
Right.
First and foremost. So I don't know what the exact model is there, but I thought that's what I heard them sell me.
Right, and that's an electrical engineer question.
Mhm.
Could,
If the city owns all the property, I think then they're fine. Then Eversource would be
Yeah, that's
okay
a-
if it has to cross.
That's a
right of way.
regulatory question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same grid, virtual net metering,
right. Same grade.
same grid.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
grid.
Yeah, it's not, you're not gonna connect the two. I mean,
Yeah. You
but-
don't have to connect.
Right. So those are, I was. There's a lot of questions about that whole endeavor that.
Yep.
I think we need a meeting of the minds about.
And we had a great meeting with Katrin Casper. I know, Peter, you weren't able to join us for that. You know, and one of the things that she asked us was, what is your goal? What's your objective? Just because you can do it.
Right.
You know, does it, and so. Yeah, that was it was great that she came out and asked that.
Yep.
And because, you know, she said, are you looking as a city of Portsmouth, looking to be an energy producer? Are you trying to put this behind the meter, or are you? Because if she, Clean Energy New Hampshire and Katrin are working with municipalities across the state that are putting solar arrays on capped landfills, and you know, they all have a slightly different situation. Recently, they worked with Exeter.
Yep.
To get their new system online, and I think they're working with, is it Rochester or somebody?
Could be,
Yeah, somebody just up the road from us here too. But that's what I think it would be important for us to decide, you know, to talk about what it is.
that's the goal, yeah.
What's the goal? I know we, in one of these meetings, we talked about approaching community power.
Mhm.
You know, could we be an energy producer for community power? Would they be interested in partnering with us? And how would that benefit the residents of
Right.
of Portsmouth? Oh,
Yes. There's a number of models. You know, is the coalition ready to to do power purchase agreements? I know they want to. The Exeter model is intriguing to me because it's a landfill beside their sewer plant. So it's behind the meter for their sewer plant.
Mhm.
And they built it themselves. They didn't use a revision. Well, I mean, they used a revision as a contractor, but
yeah.
revision wasn't in on didn't have a power
Financing.
purchase agreement.
Go ahead.
So they took out a bond and it was cash flow positive paying the bond. And then after the bond is done, it's very positive. And they've offset all their carbon for the whole town. So, you know, that's sort of a trifecta, it
Yeah.
seems to me. And, you know, maybe we should get their guys up here to talk to us. You
You know,
know,
when the Northern Pass was still in discussion, coming power from Canada coming down, Eversource did a lot of projects up north to encourage people to support the project. One of them was in Lancaster, which I visited at the time. And they helped to fund, or I don't know what the funding exactly was, but they helped to set up for Lancaster a huge solar array that was operating their wastewater treatment facility and their recycling center, which was adjacent to that. And it was allegedly providing all the power they needed for both, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your, yes, Ben.
Be the sequence here. Peter has revision come out and kind of demonstrate proof of concept that, you know, it's possible to do this. They don't encounter any red flags. Then we have something in hand that says, yeah, this is feasible. But then I presume if we were to move forward, we would need to do some kind of procurement or
But I think,
open process where we would invite proposals.
I think we're skipping a step in that. If we're talking about building something.
Yeah.
Right? Before we even build it, what are our goals? Because there's a lot of different models.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But you can get into a circular thing because
Right.
to me, what are our opportunities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can determine what my goals are, but I have no idea what my opportunities are, then,
Yeah.
you know, so for me, some sort of evaluation of our potential places to put things.
Yeah.
Right.
This is just one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's the possible, you know, technical potential?
Yeah.
And then what's economic and then what's achievable, kind of a concept.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you, it would make sense to do that big picture thinking. And this is a good time to do that big picture thinking.
Right. And there's a political dimension too, because there's people who walk on those trails. There's people who like that as recreation area.
Yeah.
So we'd be clear cutting? I thought we were. using-
No.
just
This
on
would
the
be on
cap.
top of the capped landfill. Nobody's walking on the capped landfill.
No, I know,
Yeah,
that's what I
this
mean.
spot.
It's
So
got
it
a
wouldn't
big
affect
fence
the
around it.
So
trails,
it wouldn't be
right?
affected, it wouldn't affect the trails that are there already because they're not on the capped landfill.
Right, okay, that's what I
So,
thought.
and as far as I know, and you can correct me if anybody knows more,
Oh,
but
okay.
as far as I know, the only project that has been green lighted for a capped landfill for solar is the one in Jaffrey. There are other projects in the pipeline, but I don't think
Oh,
they've,
there's, gosh, I don't know, when we were talking to Katrin. There's
Yeah.
probably 8 or 10 that exist in the state right now. And there's,
already installed or?
yeah, installed,
Oh,
and then
okay.
there's a handful that are in the planning,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
yeah.
Then we have something to compare against.
But I don't know who we reach out to, and it could be Clean Energy New Hampshire. To help us identify what all the different opportunities are. All right, I mean, we all know like power purchase agreement, right? I mean, somebody could come in and build it for us and then
Yeah,
give us give us a check every month. All the way to, creating power for, having a partnership with, I don't know, with community power. Or putting something behind the meter. At the high school.
Or bonding and doing the whole other thing. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the city can probably help us identify what parcels are available. Presumably, they're expensive and not very many here in Portsmouth.
Right.
To do something like develop something that we could bring in other municipalities for like a community power deal.
Well, and that's if we look, and Peter Britz has been good about saying in the past, he said, I really don't think there's any parcels except for but there are, except for that Jones Ave landfill. That really,
Big ones, yeah.
yeah, that's really big, but I don't know, I'm not smart enough to know all those different opportunities, the different models. As you said,
And
that's,
it's canopies on the table, is rooftop on the
Right,
table.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Like
right.
these are all
right,
different considerations.
yeah,
Right. And to me, that's a work session with, a number of take it from a number of angles, from the, maybe we have the developer there, maybe we have Katrin who's been around and seen these around the state, maybe we have the Exeter person.
Mhm.
Or maybe we do those sequentially, but I tend to think, you know, a couple of work sessions.
Would Katrin or Clean Energy New Hampshire be able to facilitate a workshop like that?
Yeah, I think they
They
would.
might know the right questions to ask or the right people to
Right,
invite,
right.
put us in a room together and just to give it a
Mhm.
framework and a guiding.
Sure.
Yep.
Yes, because they've done more of them than we have.
Yeah.
Uh, And we're all smart, but we're not experienced.
Right.
Katrin keeps checking in with me since we had that last meeting with her. And I'm like, we're getting there, we're getting, he's like, when do you want to get together again?
Hmm.
So,
Let me talk to her about facilitating something.
yeah, please do.
I think that's a great idea, Ben.
Yeah.
That's the next
We
step.
gotta start somewhere. We do.
It's great.
As a bit of just information, maybe some of you have seen this already, from Bloomberg Energy. I think I saw it maybe a month ago. One of the things that's becoming very popular in Germany now, and this is regarding renters. You know, people want to participate in solar, but they're renters. They don't own the building or they rent the building. And the latest thing in Germany is these portable solar panels or blankets that you can put out on your balcony.
Yes.
You hang over your balcony. And I don't know how many watts it produces, but anybody can do it. And you can plug it into a regular wall outlet somehow, or an adapter or something goes into your house. And I guess you offset the energy use you're using in your house. And you know, it's as they say, even small animals make manure. So if you get enough people doing this, because people who can't have rooftop solar, can't put an array in their backyard or something, who want to do something, you know, these things allegedly are very cheap. It's like $100 or something like that. So it's amazing.
I've seen those, yeah.
That's brilliant. Is that something with the regulations that we have here in the US?
I don't know. I'm gonna find out about that because I haven't seen anything here in the US about that.
Because it doesn't take, I mean, if everybody just has a
Yeah.
little bit of generation,
Yeah.
it really, yeah, that's interesting.
Hope your panel's in good shape.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've had a good long meeting tonight, so I know you all would like to get home. Any other business? I will follow up with Katrin and see if she can facilitate a solar panel discussion.
That'd be great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.